Astronaut. Now, in this video, I'm going to be focusing on women. I'm actually just going to fit dating, marriage, and the whole fitting into a box thing all in the last video. I said I was going to talk about dating in this video. I'm just going to fit it all into the last video. In this video, I want to focus on women. Now, the male-female dynamic, what it means to be masculine, what it means to be feminine, the differences between men and women, gender roles, etc., has been something that has always fascinated me, and I have been studying it just in my own personal time and on a scholarly level for about 5 years. So I want to especially go into one paragraph that I really wanted to be read out of all of Roger Devlin's essays. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to you.
I see no reason they might not stipulate that the husband would vote on behalf of his family. Feminists who think political participation more important than family life could still live as they please, but they would be forced to make a clear choice. This would help erode the superstitious belief in a universal right to participate in politics, and political life itself would be less affected by the feminine tendencies to value security over freedom and to base public policies on sentiment. Property would also be more secure, where the producers of wealth have greater political power.
Okay, now, let's get into some statistics from the Center of American Women in Politics. It goes over different gender gaps. Now, they basically got together different sources and combined it into, one paper and asked the following questions to both men and women. Now, these are the responses. They asked, would you like to abolish affirmative action? 36% of women said yes, compared to 52% of men. Would you like stricter gun laws? 67% of women said yes, compared to 57% of men. Do you think that the minimum wage should be revised? 83% of women said yes, compared to 72% of males. Do you think that healthcare should be socialized? 69% of women said yes, compared to 57% of males. Do you think, this was literally worded this way, do you think the government should go more in debt to help the needy? 53% of women said yes, compared to 43% of males. And finally, the last question, do you think that we have too much government? Only 50% of women said yes, compared to 66% of males. As we can see from looking at these statistics, it's women more so than men that will give up their liberties in exchange for securities. Women more so than men will give up the right of an employer to choose who he wants to hire in exchange for affirmative action. Women more so than men will give up the right to bear arms in exchange for stricter gun laws. Women more so than men will give up the right to keep their own personal property, which is your income. Your income is your personal property. No one has a right to that. They will give up that right in exchange for a larger government. So, were the female vote not a factor, we would have more liberties and more freedoms today, which is why I am not particularly offended or taken aback by Devlin's suggestion to have the men vote on behalf of the family, because I can see where he's coming from. So, his assessment that women do vote based upon sentiments and the fact that women do tend to give up liberty in exchange for security more so than men is correct. I mean, that is an objective fact. Looking at the voting trends, that is true.
Okay, Astronaut, let's go ahead and get into another part of Devlin's essay that you brought up.
If there are, they just don't matter. Variation is not the norm, apparently. And he has this obvious, terrible bias against women. This is in the last part, but I quote, marriage, like most useful things, was probably invented by men. Partly to keep the social peace, partly so that they could be certain their wives' children were also their own. My God, my wife would kick the shit out of me if she thought I believed that. His answer to the feminist trends.
Okay, let's get into it.
I personally don't see why anyone would be offended by that statement. And honestly, I personally don't think that your wife would be. I don't know, maybe she would be, but I mean, to me, that's an objective fact. Men have created most useful things. Now, granted, women have created some very useful inventions. A woman is responsible for the Mars rover. A woman is responsible for the invention of the disposable diapers that was created by Marianne Donovan. Betty Graham is responsible for whiteout. Helen Blanchard invented the sewing machine, and Ruth Wakefield is responsible for the chocolate chip cookie. Now, granted, I do like chocolate chip cookies, but these inventions, not even the Mars rover, is something that has moved our society forward. I mean, even the Mars rover, that's not the internet, that's not electricity, that's not the plane, the train, the automobile, that's, that's not the light bulb. I mean, men are responsible for most useful inventions. If you and I lived in two different societies, and you lived in a society that had only inventions created by women, and I lived in a society that had only inventions created by men, we would see who lived at a more comfortable standard of living, and it would not be you, okay? Men are responsible for most useful inventions. And then the fact that, then the little quote he said about marriage, to me, that makes perfect sense. A woman knows that the child is hers. It's coming out of her body. Whereas a man, he has to know that the woman is monogamous in order to know whether or not the child is his. I mean, now we have paternity tests, but, I mean, there was a time when those didn't exist, so I can definitely see why in the past men have been more responsible for marriage than women. It is definitely more important for them to know that the wife is monogamous, more so than it is for the wife to know that the man is monogamous, in regards to knowing whether or not the child is their own. The fact that men have created most useful things can be attributed to the way that the male brain works as opposed to the female brain. Now, in women, we see a lack of genius. And basically, I can show you a graph. This is from, I've actually seen several articles on this. I'm going to go ahead and just sort of explain one that I got out of Psychology Today. Okay. So here's the graph, right? Okay, so there are way more stupid men than there are stupid women. This is what accounts for the fact that most criminals are men. Most just stupid people tend to be men. I mean, you really don't run into that many just stupid women. So there are way more stupid men than there are stupid women. So here's the graph. It goes like this. Then it goes down to about average, and then goes up to the genius level. So there's also a lot of geniuses that are men. So men tend to be more genius, some of them are average, and then there's more stupid men than there are stupid women. Now, the graph for women goes more so like this. There's some stupid women. Most fall about average, and then there are some genius women, right? So, I mean, there are geniuses that are women. There are much fewer of them, which this explains why, for every 200 great inventions created by men, there's maybe one, if that women have created, because there's simply less genius women. That is a fact. There are less women geniuses than there are male geniuses. Now, even though there are way more stupid men than there are stupid women, if you were to take any male and female at random, on average, any given male will have at least 3 to 5 IQ points higher than any given female. So the so-called glass ceiling, it isn't necessarily attributed to discrimination or the fact that males are trying to keep women down. It's just more so the fact that, women aren't of course there are women CEOs, but I mean, they're in such a smaller number because there simply just aren't as many smart women as there are smart men. And I'm not saying that women are stupid, I'm just saying that men are smarter They are smarter.
See, so the graph looks a little something like this. Here's imbecile. Not that many women imbeciles, lots of men imbeciles. Most women fall about average. Very few are genius. Some men are genius. And then some of them fall about average. So here's the comparison graph between men and women.